I've put together for when visiting the Renaissance Festival a set of men's garb. So if you're going to dress up to go to the Renaissance Festival, Benjamin, it might be something that you would wear. Because I don't think you would wear a dress. I don't know.
I don't
I'm
think
not
I
I'm
would.
not
You're going to have
assigning
to
a Renaissance
give.
Festival outfit to you.
You went straight into that without much warning, and I think we need context for the introduction of the term Renaissance Festival into the conversation.
Oh, wait, you don't know what a Renaissance fair is, Alistair?
Oh no, I do. I just don't understand why Corinna suddenly started talking about them. Also, I don't know why I'm
Oh,
saying it
because
like an American. A
this is part of
Because
Renaissance fair.
it's fake
because
and
this is
gay, and
my
that's what
garb.
she's into.
This is part of
Oh,
my garb,
oh,
Okay.
okay.
and I go in men's garb and women's garb now. So it just depends on the how the coin flip falls.
So there were gender fluid people in Renaissance times.
Yes, surely.
All, all the Shakespeare were played by men, right? Males and females.
Boys,
Oh, okay.
boys. I bet there wasn't any sex going on though.
Nubile boys. You never know with those thespians.
Yeah. The femboys in the theater are probably not getting fucked by the directors. That would be a surprise.
Okay. Well,
Oh,
okay.
sorry. Are we recording?
Well, I mean,
Well, we're
we're
going to
not
have to
going to
restart
record
now.
that. Yeah, we got to restart now.
You could have said, there's so many things you could have said instead of the F word, Corinna. Don't
Femboy?
list them because then we have to start again.
Femboy. What's up with the
Femboy.
femboy phenomenon? Is that a good thing for society or not?
I think we
I
should
don't
talk about
understand
it because
what
that's a
is it?
great
Is it like
question.
femboy pride? Is it people kind of taking pride in being feminine boys?
Well, it's not just that. There's a sex component to it.
Okay,
It's like
go
it's
on.
like I think it's a parrot. Well, it's parroting the rise of the e-girl. So
Okay.
younger men who can pull off femininity can produce it for attention on the internet and
Mm,
become like kind of
that's right.
simulated e-girls.
Yeah. What, and they're on like what's it called? OnlyFans and stuff like that.
And
Yeah,
Instagram.
they get admirers.
I don't think that's positive. I don't think anything about
No,
OnlyFans is positive. You know, there's a woman who sells her farts in jars.
Oh,
I don't know her.
there's the bathwater girl, uh, Belle Daphne or something. She's like the
Oh,
paragon
yeah, that rings
of
a bell. I
e-girls.
heard
Yeah.
that name. I heard somebody talking about that.
This is a gross topic. Maybe we should move on.
We should talk about Killarney,
Yes, the
and we should talk
conference.
about
Yeah.
WPATH, and we should talk
Yes.
about Texas. We should maybe talk about Texas first.
Well, it
I don't
seems
know.
like
Corinna, what do you reckon?
yeah, it's fine. Benjamin, I don't mean to be a bad guest. Are we recording things that are going to be used as content right now?
We're cutting in as soon as we get serious here.
Every
Okay.
time you say that, the answer becomes no.
Not yet.
Then could I propose? I apologize. I have a hard cutoff at 1:30.
Yeah.
It's Come on, don't smile like that, Alistair. Um, the Do we want to get started and Ritchie will
Yes.
join as he can and I'll drop out?
Yes.
All right, I'm ready.
Texas.
Texas. Hey,
What's going?
Texas.
Hey y'all. Hey y'all. Can you do a Texas accent, Alistair, please?
I'm not sure I know enough about it. I only know one Texan.
Okay.
I know, is it howdy y'all? Is it like that vaguely? Probably not.
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
Okay.
So what's the deal with Texas? What's going on in Texas?
Well, for the last couple of months, I've been going to Texas. They are in session right now. I think they're coming to the end of their legislative session. I've been meeting with legislators. This is all coordinated by a number of parents who have kids that are transitioning. And there's a bill which eventually got the number 3502, House Bill 3502, which is pretty simple. What it does is that it requires if insurance companies provide any coverage to allow people to start medical transition, that those insurance companies must also continue to provide care for any sort of complications or follow-up care, or if somebody is detransitioning, reconstructive surgery. So it has been the case with particularly detransitioners that a girl will identify as a boy, take testosterone for a few months or a couple of years, have a double mastectomy, and then after 2 or 3 years say, I wish I hadn't done this. And although you cannot get your natural chest repaired to be brought back to what you were born with or developed, you can at least have reconstructive surgery to get something that is similar. But what is happening all over the country is that insurance companies say, this isn't medically necessary. So although it's arguable whether having the double mastectomy was medically necessary in the first place, nevertheless, these detransitioners find themselves in a spot where it was very easy to change their bodies, that they have regret that they have done so, and that they find that there's a huge wall in front of them, sometimes represented by the same insurer that helped them have their breast cut off in the first place, to be able to have any sort of reconstructive surgery. In addition, a lot of these medical procedures, when we're talking about things like hormone blockers that we're giving to young adolescents, that those could have side effects of causing osteoporosis. And so the same legislation would require, if there's a side effect or a complication from a drug or a procedure, that the insurance company must also continue to provide coverage for the follow-up care or to cover any sort of complications. So that was something that me and a group of other advocates fought for very hard since February. Many meetings at the state legislature, a lot of begging and pleading and favor calling and all sorts of things to get this rolled forward. And, getting it through the committee, getting the committee to vote on it, and getting it onto the legislative calendar for a second reading, all of these things are steps that have to be overcome for a bill to get into law. What happened yesterday is that the Democrats in Texas did something that they call chubbing, which is that every bill needs to have a second reading before this phase of the legislative process ends. And the Democrats did everything that they could to delay the reading of additional bills so that they missed the cutoff deadline. And last night, the deadline was midnight, and it was a race down to the finish. And unfortunately, our bill, HB 3502, did not make it over the finish line because of the delaying tactics of the Texas Democrats. And at the midnight deadline, when our bill was up for a reading and was not able to be read, the Democrats cheered and clapped, and they said, "We did it, we stopped it." And
this bill specifically?
This bill specifically.
Okay.
And remember that the only thing that it does is require insurers to provide additional coverage if they cover any transition procedures.
So can I just come in really quickly and just spell something out just really quickly? There could be a trans rights activist in Texas who hates me and hates all of us and is very, very ideological and believes there's trans genocide coming and so forth. That person might have sex reassignment surgery and might have complications which could potentially lead to incontinence or something like that. This bill blocks that person from getting that corrective procedure done on insurance. So they are now literally out of spite harming trans people who want to stay trans and think transphobia is everywhere and death before detransition. And they will even throw those people under the bus and say, pay for your own reconstructive surgery just out of spite. I mean, that's so Corinna, so maybe that idea of spite is
you cut off your peen to smite your face, I guess, kind of thing.
Yeah, I do, because I put my reputation behind this bill. I do want to be very clear about something, Alasdair. Insurance companies can voluntarily offer reconstructive procedures for detransitioners. And so it might be that if you're lucky enough, your insurer might cover it.
Okay.
A lot of them do not. So somebody would
Do
not
we have
be blocked
numbers
from
on
being
that?
able to get. In Texas, we don't have clear numbers because this is very fuzzy. We know that some people have been denied their claims and they give up after being denied once or twice. Some people are tenacious and they try 3 or 4 or 5 times to get their claims covered. And sometimes the insurance companies will do it on a case-by-case basis. So it's hard to say by numbers what the different companies are doing because it really depends more on an individual basis. But instead of requiring individuals to doggedly pursue their claims, some of which or many of which would be denied anyway, what this does is say, if you provide the on-ramp into this condition, you also have to provide all of the maintenance care and also the off-ramp.
So do you know the mindset that would make the Democrats cheer for this bill not to go through? So it seems like they have an idea that this is a bad thing. I don't see how it's a bad thing.
I believe I can represent it. So I'm going to give it the best steelman argument that I can, and then I'm going to tell you what I think is actually happening, because I think these are two different things. So the strongest steelman argument is if you require, for example, that an insurance company that covers a phalloplasty, which is the most highest rate of complications for any of these gender-affirming surgeries, that if you say that this procedure, which might require 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 follow-up surgeries due to complications, also have to be covered by insurance, that the insurance company will say, well, that's too expensive for us to cover, and therefore we're not even going to cover the initial phalloplasty. So what could happen in some cases is that the insurers would choose to reduce the amount of coverage that they offer for some procedures. And I'll be honest with you, that is something that we are not opposed to happening if some of these procedures are so dangerous and unreliable that they end up causing a massive harm to the patient. And let's say phalloplasty is without a doubt the most extreme example of that. So they say, well, if this passes, there'll be fewer phalloplasties. Now, I think what's actually happening is that because there's other legislation that's happening in the Texas House right now, one of the things being SB 14, which curtails pediatric gender transition medication. I believe what's actually happening is that the Democrats are resigned to the fact that SB 14 is going to pass despite all of their delaying tactics. And this is just a thumb in the eye of the Republican sponsors of this legislation for also supporting SB 14. This is just revenge.
I just spoke with Leor Sapir yesterday. He works for the Manhattan Institute, and he's a scholar of American governance and political theory. And we got into the weeds about the legality or the lawfare around this issue. And the lawfare is a little bit different than the what you're describing here, which is the legislative kind of aspect, which is very much more political. I mean, it's all political, but the judiciary stuff's a little less political. And I think that it's an absolute crying shame that this is a political topic, that this is like Oregon and California and Texas now, they're all using the bodies of children to fight a war. It's like this World War I proxy thing where they're using the bodies of distressed children to make political points. It's just so egregious. And I know that it has to happen in some way or another, but like the kids themselves are completely forgotten, or the ideas around the kids themselves. And me and Leor spoke at length about this trans kid just as a meme and just how powerful it is to kind of shut off a lot of different critical thinking around this issue.
Yeah.
Heather Brunskill Evans is very good on that. The invention of the transgender kid. It's like the Child Crusades or something. Sorry, Corinna, go on.
No, I just wanted to add. I think it's really important to realize that although some people represent this as trans hostile or anti-trans as the side I'm on.
Protagonist.
And their side is pro-trans, trans antagonist. What I would say is a more accurate or a fairer view of this is that my side is asking that we have evidence that supports any of these procedures, evidence that people are better off or that they have higher metrics on their health metrics by any of these procedures. And what we have found out through time and time again is that the level of evidence is extremely low, and that there's just as much evidence that this is harmful as it is helpful. So, and these are kids that we're talking about.
And then there's another accompanying question, which, in addition, which is not just where's the evidence for this, but what's the evidence against something else? Because there are different ways that you can deal with this if a kid is really distressed by this. So there's a question that I want people at the likes of EPATH to answer, which is, what are the risks associated with trying to deal with, let's call it gender dysphoria, whatever you want to call it, through therapy and life changes? What do they see the risks? Because I think they should be able to quantify that. Or at least if they can't quantify it, they can at least outline it.
That sets up what I think is the other side, or the pro-trans side, which is that they believe that it's anybody who identifies as trans is innately trans, and that anything that stands in the way of people being able to medicalize their condition is a way of denying somebody from being able to achieve their authentic self. So they have something that's something of a Gnostic argument that's not a medical argument. And we're making medical arguments, and they're making, we're not going to be able to speak on the same terms because we're trying to get to different outcomes.
It's their anthem, the EPATH's anthem was "Don't Stop Believing," and it's like that's literally the opposite of science. The whole point of science is that if you say to your physics teacher, "I don't believe in gravity," your physics teacher should say, "Form an alternative hypothesis, test it, work out what you need, conduct the experiment, put it to your peers, do another experiment, and form it." So if we had an anthem, it should be "Stop Believing." It's literally the opposite. Stop believing, test it.
At least just pause believing. Just take some Lupron, pause your believing.
Yeah, or sit with your beliefs and then kind of, test them again and think, well, how would I think of this if I really didn't believe that, and all the rest of it. I thought Eliza was so good on that topic. She was brilliant. Just that the kind of, and tying that in with this point that the only people who doubt whether they're trans are trans. So that's a cognitive sinkhole, because as soon as you think, well, am I trans? Oh, I'm trans, and it's done. And this whole idea of belief and how central it is to what they're doing, which of course it doesn't need to be, because you can have sex reassignment surgery and think of it as entirely cosmetic if you want. You don't have to believe anything about your soul. You don't have to have a soul. You can just say, quite like a neo-vagina, if that's what you want.
Well, yeah, but do you achieve the same level of? I don't mean this. There's this thing called trans joy that's kind of a meme. Yeah. Like trans joy is real. And I just had a friend who had feminization surgery, and before and after the surgery, there was this. They expressed to me like this great feeling of happiness and fitting in, right? Like this euphoria around this body modification surgery to actualize that. I don't think that you can have that without some sort of belief structure that you're fulfilling some sort of hero's journey or some sort of like authenticity. So I don't think you can take the belief away and just make it cosmetic and still have the same drive to do it and the same positive regard for it.
Well, I've met trans people who say that they don't believe in any gender identity theory and that there was none of that, and it was just an improvement. And I don't know. It's difficult to know what people believe, and it's difficult to know what beliefs will endure.
Yeah.
Well, just to bring things back to one of the things I care about at the moment, which is what we're actually doing to young people. The young people don't really have the experience or sophistication to work out beliefs versus facts quite at the same level as somebody who's had a little bit more worldliness. And so one of the things I'm worried about when we're dealing with this as a belief system is that belief and fact are getting conflated in the minds of young people. So if you use the term, and I'm sure you covered this with Lior, Sapir, but if you're using a term like trans kid, what you're doing is you're implicitly saying it is an innate property of this person that they're trans. It's not acquired, it's innate. And therefore, somebody who's innately this way has to be treated a certain way. And these young people are not saying, I'm going to affiliate with trans, I'm going to join the trans party and do the things that the party is looking for. They're saying, I am trans, I was born this way, and therefore all of this belief system, which I'm not recognizing as an ideology, is something that applies to me, and I have to start fighting for now. Like, I have to have these operations or else I'll kill myself. I have to have access to hormone replacement therapy or else I won't be able to be my authentic self. You know, these young people are extremely influenced by this, and they need a way to work it out. Hello, Ritchie.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Ritchie.
Nice. Hi, Alasdair. Nice hat, Boise.
Thanks, bro. How you doing? You look
I'm
fresh.
fine.
Corinna let us down on the hat front. Come on, Corinna, put it on.
Yeah.
Go on.
just gotta have
God,
fun.
where's my hat? I don't have a hat. I feel left out.
Swap these out.
You got a hat.
It's very
Got a nice-
French. That
It
yeah,
is.
the feather's hidden. The feather needs to be. You know how Princess Anne trolled Prince Harry with the massive feather at the
That was
coronation
intentional?
Apparently, you need to do that with it. You need to go and. Oh, he can't hear.
Yeah.
We were just
Yeah.
saying it suits you.
Yeah, I wear it to the grocery store and I get looks. I'm
What,
kidding.
for
I don't
wearing
do
your
that,
hat?
but why don't I? I'm
But,
gonna
you
start
know,
wearing to this
it's like
shopping.
you present the way you present, but you won't wear a hat at the shop.
Like a
Gosh.
pillbox hat? Is that a song? Is that what you're saying? Richie, can you just like adjust your camera to put yourself front and center just for editing later on? Just
Yeah,
angle it
sure.
down. Just a little.
Are we,
just a
are
little
we
helpful.
better now?
Yeah,
We're
that's
good?
great. Yeah,
We're in
yeah,
frame? Yeah? Right there?
Boop, boop, boop.
There we are.
So we were talking about Texas, but now that you're on the call, we can talk a little bit about what's
Texas.
going on other fronts, if you guys want. In the wake of meeting all the detransitioners, everybody getting together, meeting all these different levels of people that are invested in the conversation at Killarney. If there's some lessons that we derive from that, or if there's energy, or if there's opportunities that have opened up on the positive end specifically.
There's so much chatter. There's so many people who feel kind of activated. There's lots of people who've been saying things like, oh, I've been meaning to blah, 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 whatever it is, some project of theirs. And now I feel like I met somebody, or do you know what I mean? And so there's loads of chatter. It's just chatter has increased massively in some way. So just like my WhatsApp's just like 3 times as active generally, do you know? And there's lots of kind of people thinking about what to do and initiatives. And yeah, I think it was I was just talking to Jesse about this. I think it was very meaningful for a lot of people to meet physically the first time. People who've been working with one another for maybe years. There is something different about it, and it created a nice energy. And it was just really amazing just to be able to walk around Killarney openly without anyone feeling like they need to hide their lanyard or worrying about being on camera. I'm sure there were a few people who kind of had concerns because there were parents there and stuff, but it really feels like that's changed. Like, I swear if we'd done it a year ago, there would have been loads of emails like, where are the cameras going to be? I need to avoid them. And we would have had somebody emailing saying you need to do an announcement beforehand telling people to be careful for their security. And there was none of that. I'm not saying the world has changed and the world has changed forever. It's just it was a really interesting experience to see how little fear there seemed to be.
Which
That
is
was my read of
remarkable because maybe from a historical point of view, people won't realize just how much fear and repression, self-repression has been going on. I mean, we know it now. We've seen it. I've seen it. I don't have the same level of it, but with parents, and then the blowback for detransitioners, the blowback for anybody who stands against this has been really high for a really long time. And
teachers and
Has
really,
there been blowback
restrained.
though? I mean, I've had criticism, but blowback
Well,
to
I'm
me would
just
seem like all with the only criticism like we're getting is from that one main camp. And listen, there are outliers who do criticize how we do things. There's always a purity spiral somewhere, right? You know?
mhm, mhm.
But on the whole, it's just the people that we've left from the cult, as it were, who are really, really on our case, and the allies who, and I saw this mentioned on Twitter, and God, I wish I had the credit to give the person who said it, possibly was Corinna. But anyway, it was just all about how like trans allies are now worse than trans activists. Like
Mm.
right now. It's like it's hit that point now, and everyone's just like they are engaged and activated, and now we are engaged and activated. And it looks like it feels like everyone's just gearing up for a big scrap. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like that's where we're
Hmm.
heading to. Like everyone's up in the game. And just want to very quickly go back and say meeting the other detransitioners in person was so refreshing for the soul in a way that I just can't really get across. And obviously, I met all of you guys and I hugged all of you guys, and that was great too. Don't get us wrong. But just being with, like, you know, how, like, just being in the same room with all these people who have been watching on a screen for the last couple of years, just all like laughing and being together. Oh, God, it was so beautiful. Like, and it was so refreshing, and it was exactly what we needed and we really need to do. And I think one of us, probably me, will end up organizing like a meetup, probably one in Europe and one in the US. And it's just about how do we navigate around that because most of us don't work. Like, obviously, I work and stuff, but most of us don't because of things. But yeah, God, it was so good. I loved it so much.
yeah. It was an amazing weekend. I feel the same, not about obviously about my fellow detransitioners, so I don't have any, but about the first people I met coming into this. That was the biggest thing for me, the parents. So
The
the
parents.
parents that we went to dinner with a few times, and that was huge. But yeah, I just kind of wish I could live that weekend over and over again. It was just incredibly, as I said, it's incredibly annoying because like I spoke for 10 minutes to people that I would happily have put them in the car and driven them all up the coast and the Wild Atlantic Way and gone for a nice lunch and da 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 da, da, and you just kind of rushed through 5 minute conversations. That was really annoying. So I'm glad people are talking about doing more stuff independently. Yeah.
Corinna, what about you?
Yeah.
How was it for you to plug into that and to see that happening and be involved in that weekend?
That's a pretty interesting question, Benjamin. I'm sort of walking my own beat in some ways. There were times with Genspect, don't get me wrong, Genspect was amazing, but there were a few panels that I was just like, yeah, I'm in the chorus here, right? I don't need to hear all of this again, so I'm going to go bother EPATH.
Oh,
So I was back and forth between the various conferences, and mostly what I want to do is get there to be more interaction happening between our side and their side, because I think that in the ideal future state that we're trying to get to, there actually needs to be more interaction between people who see things differently.
Watch this space.
how would that interaction take place? How would that initiate? Were there any bridges or even ropes flung across that divide from your? And just
Yes.
for anybody who's tuning in who doesn't know what we're talking about, Genspect is an organization that brings together a bunch of other organizations that's trying to take a very evidence-based, compassionate framework on trans health, detrans health, and the entire gender issue. And then EPATH is a medical organization that sets forth standards of care that is explicitly ideological, explicitly pro-trans, and as Eliza Mondegreen has detailed, very set in its ways, anti-evidence in a lot of ways. And I'll have Eliza on next week to talk about that along with Aaron Terrell. So these two camps really have a big gap between them. And Corinna, Eliza, and Wesley Yang were a few of the people who were going back and forth and witnessing both sides of this.
EPATH wrote to us, which is to our knowledge... To Genspect, which is to our knowledge the first time any path, WPATH, USPATH, EPATH, OSPATH, could be wrong, but to our knowledge, the first time they've ever acknowledged the existence of any organization which doesn't share their viewpoint. And that's major. We're going to react. We're talking about how to respond and so forth. But it's major because their only weapon has been no debate. Their weapon has been no debate. And then the activists come in and savage people, whether it's detransitioners or parents. It's the same model, which is they don't debate, you don't exist, we don't even know about it. They'll sit there and say, we've never heard of anyone detransitioned or whatever. And then they're just kind of aloof and unseeing, and then the activists come in and savage people and tell them that just the worst things imaginable. And they wrote to us and they said, we're upset at the way you've characterized us, to which my response is, well, now you know how that feels. Because you've called... Well, I got in a small bit of trouble for saying that. Because you said it and then you said it and then I said it. And I said, there was no way I was going to be self-serving and paternal and say, well, I wouldn't put it in those terms because, and I thought, no. So I said it in the heat of the moment, like, they did call the police on us a week before we arrived in Killarney. Then they called us genocidal. Yeah, they called the police. It's mad. They called the police. To say, like, we might be unsafe, basically. And the police just obviously ignored them because it's the Irish rural police. So, like, what?
What? You might be.
I know.
What do you mean? That's crazy.
They sent out an email to all of their members saying, we know some of you feel unsafe and we've contacted the authorities. They didn't say the police, but there's no way to... Ritchie, in Britain and Ireland, if you say I've contacted the authorities, like, that's the police, right? And then they called us genocidal, and then they blocked us on Twitter. So it's like, you're not showering yourself in glory.
It really seems like the shoe is on the other foot.
It feels like the shoe is on the other foot. And I want to come back to something that Corinna said, which is I think we should maximize opportunities for dialogue. I really do. But I would like that dialogue to be as public as possible. I would like an answer to the question, what are the associated risks with dealing with distress about your gender in a non-medicalized way? Like, what are the risks? Because it seems to me all they've got is a bunch of, frankly, incredibly flaky stuff about suicide and suicidality, which doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And I don't see much else there. So I would like I would like both sides to be thinking, okay, what if we're wrong? What are the risks if we're wrong? If we're wrong, there are... Corinna, you're shaking your head. Why? What's wrong?
I am, because I explained this a little earlier before Ritchie got here, so I'll just repeat it very briefly. That's our mindset of what are the benefits and what are the risks. What can you tell us the evidence shows? They're never going to think of in those terms. They don't care about that. They're going to say, well,
I know. I just want to prove that. I want to prove that. I want to prove that. I want to challenge them to do it, and I want to see them fail to do it. That's the point. Because any scientist should be able to engage with the opposite argument and know it well. So I want to show the world that they can't do that.
They're not the scientists, though. They're going to flip it around and say, the risk is that these people will have to live in a state of repression and inauthenticity for much longer. And if you make them do that, their bodies will mature in such a way that they'll require additional surgeries in order to become their authentic selves. That's what they'll answer.
And I think it's important for them to state that.
Okay.
when do they state these things? When do they actually basically say, we believe in magic internal gender fairies, which is kind of the message. I would not mind seeing that in writing, or I wouldn't mind hearing somebody say it in a recorded context, because I think surely being open about these different approaches is the right way forward.
I mean, they presented as much at EPATH.
Do you have any specific stories, Corinna, from EPATH from that weekend? What was happening on the other side of the crevasse?
A number, but I did have a snoop on a conversation Susie Green had with Tara Hewitt, where they were trying to figure out plans how to get private healthcare, quote unquote, services through Gender GP into Ireland. And I've written
Susie
about
Green. That. Oh, you've written about it. So just to map it for the person strange to the story, Susie Green is the head, or was the head, of this Mermaids organization, which was promoting specifically trans healthcare for
castrated a gay son just
children.
before his 16th birthday in Thailand. Sorry, voice. I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah.
And also, she blamed all the homophobia that she experienced on her husband. Susie Green, you are a coward, and you are a homophobe, and you castrated your only child. So fuck you, Susie Green. There you go.
Okay. And now she kind of got booted out of Mermaids, and now is going over to Ireland and trying to get Ireland to do her bidding, or at least side with her, by reforming.
Well, she's trying to re-educate the Irish, because she's decided the Irish are too enamored of the HSE, which is the healthcare system here, and need to be desensitized to accept more private care so she can make money selling hormones to kids.
Okay.
That's what...
Yep.
So it's a business opportunity.
I told
for
your
her.
story.
Yeah. Nope, that's it. That's the beginning, and middle, and the end of it, is that they want to. Well, I guess one other thing is that TENI, which is the Transgender Equality Network of Ireland, was one of the groups that brought EPATH to Killarney, and their president was able to give an opening welcome speech at the opening plenary session, wherein she described the trans antagonistic side as being genocidal. So on one hand, you've got the somewhat, let's say, overstated concerns from the TENI president at the opening session. And at the other side of it is you have one of their representatives figuring out how to replace the HSE in Killarney. So to me, it's scandalous that, what do I know?
It goes back and forth between suicide and genocide.
Sorry, isn't Susie Green now part of Gender GP?
That's correct.
Yeah, I thought she was like this, not a CEO, but something.
Head of morality and values. That has an implication, all of that, which is, among other things, that EPATH, by design or probably by accident, allowed their conference to become essentially some kind of trade fair for pediatric medicine, because if you're bringing in private parties who are then not necessarily even selling their wares, but they're trying to lobby and influence such that they will be able to make more money down the line. There's also been a suggestion that because of the UK's exit from the EU, it may be easier for her to get away with it here in the Republic of Ireland rather than the UK. I don't know enough to know whether that's true, and I would doubt that I'm not sure anyone does, because I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. But at any rate, it doesn't look good, because they're sort of stood up there kind of banging on about genocide and so forth, while she's essentially saying we need to Americanize the Irish people's view of healthcare, that more or less. I don't want to say that in a way as though I think the American healthcare service has nothing to offer. I'm not trying to evangelize European model healthcare. It's just the reality is nobody here wants to change, rightly or wrongly, wants to change the healthcare system in that direction. If anything, they would be going in the other direction. That's the thrust of public opinion. So, yeah, that was a good bit of gossip. Corinna was like live. You were just typing it into the messaging as she was saying, and I was just reading it come up.
Corinna, I'm aware of your time. You have about another 10 minutes. Is there any other insights from EPATH that you'd like to share?
So I was talking about building bridges, and I'll explain why I think that we need to at least I get the emotional sentiment of fuck WPATH. I totally get that. I'm not opposed to that. I'm sorry. I know you're going to have to bleep some stuff.
No, that's fine.
Maybe.
That's fine. We're okay. Just the femboy part's going to be cut out. So everybody at home, sorry about that. You missed out.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm dressed now. The part of the EPATH session, one of the things that I attended was, hey, how do we as clinicians respond to accusations that were ideologues? So I attended a whole panel that was around this topic. One member of the panel, by the way, was the former EPATH president, who had given one of the opening plenary notes, where the guy who said they have the freedom to say what they want to, but we don't have to listen to it. That's something that was said during the EPATH opening session. He was on this session, but I went to one of the people who was on this panel afterwards, and I said, one of the ways that you guys can avoid these accusations that you're ideologues is that you can actually put some distance between yourselves and your colleagues who absolutely are ideologues, because there are like Susie Green and Helen Weberly, and I'll add Gary Butler, who's the head pediatric endocrinologist for JIDS. These people are ideologues. Polly Carmichael, who was the director of JIDS, where everything fell apart. And these people are ideologues. So if you don't want to be called an ideologue, you actually need to separate yourself from the other people who are at this EPATH meeting who are the ideologues. And he said that he agreed with that, and that he was frustrated by what he described as gender anarchists who are just demanding access to hormones and surgeries without any sort of evaluation period. And he said that doctors should not just be people who write okay letters for pharmacists and surgeons to work on them. Because from his point of view, now I know that we're going to disagree with this because we've already said the state of the evidence shows that there's no real reason for people to be modifying people like this. Set that aside for a second and say that for some people, the jury is still out, and that they think that there are some people who could be helped by it. His point of view was, I'm no longer allowed as a clinician to exercise my professional judgment about who may be helped by this and who may be harmed by it, because these activists are coming in and demanding outcomes. Like we're not professionals making decisions anymore. We're just checking boxes. I want more people in EPATH to make that complaint. I want more people in EPATH to push back on this informed consent model, because as we know, as we break it down, it's not informed, and it doesn't involve an authentic form of consent where the people who are having access to these medications and these surgeries really understand what the repercussions are. So if there's a faction inside of EPATH that will become firmer and say, no, we need to make this more medicine based instead of identity based, hell yes, I want to help those people gain more prominence.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like what happened in the wake of World War II with the Nazis being absorbed into NASA. If Genspect becomes the open tent, then it can allow defectors from EPATH to kind of assimilate and kind of distance themselves from their the baggage that's associated to that. But I don't know if that's possible.
Not if they are planning to argue for medicalization.
Could I highlight something that an interaction that I saw with Ritchie and one of the Genspect guests? Is that all right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Ken Zucker, I'm going to assume. And can you introduce the people that were involved in this?
I didn't see this, so I want to hear this.
This is in a private room.
All right, well then, I don't know.
Corey, you do it from your perspective, Xad.
All right. Well, let's say that it's a well-known Canadian clinician and not call him by any names.
It rhymes with motherfucker, actually. So there you go. I know.
Richie's coming in hot today.
I know. I had 3 gins, what you can expect.
This was in one of the private sessions, but I don't think that this reveals too much. But Ritchie asked Ken Zucker for the young people that you helped get onto the transition path. How are they doing 20 years later? How are they doing 30 years later, 40 years later? And he said, I don't know. And Ritchie said, well, don't you think that you should? And I thought that that was very poignant. And you know, you talk about having an open tent. We do have some of the people who used to be quite supportive of this transition model, a much more an earlier version of it that was considered itself to be a lot more cautious, right? But you still did have people who were advocating this transition model, and they're not doing the long-term follow-ups that all of us, I'm sure. Benjamin, I don't know if it's fair to include you or not, because you're not in our alignment necessarily, but I think the rest of us really think there should be long-term follow-up if you are transitioning children. So Ritchie, I wanted to acknowledge, I thought that was an extremely fair comment that you made.
Yeah, thank you,
nice.
Corinna. Yeah. That was in a private group where I think was that because there was two private sessions for detransitioners. One was trying to find out like the health questions. Was it that one or was it the other one?
It was that one, yes.
Right. Okay. So a lot of that, just so people know, at the conference, there was a breakout room where the detransitioners were invited to ask some medical professions about the questions they had. And naturally, a few of us, including myself, had quite a lot, especially when you've been involved in this and you're dealing with a lot of other people and you become quite familiar with a lot of the complications, even if they don't happen to you. And a lot of the questions was, we just don't know. And it was like, there is that element of frustration there that no one knows. And I know they're trying to help, but it's like, God damn, we really are in the dark. And then you got Zucker there.
Sorry, go on.
No. Yeah, so you've got like Zucker there who I don't think these people who aren't like trans themselves who have involved in it, I don't think they're fundamentally bad. I think they're just doing what's within their profession and they don't have any super strong feelings about it because they don't have the emotional investment. They've got an academic interest. And I think that is very detaching from the damage too, when you have that very academic approach. And I look at the likes of Zucker and I see more of him come through and I'm thinking, we are inviting these Trojan horses back in. And my worry is when we talk, like, for instance, Zucker believes that there are some people, 100% trans kids who will benefit, 100%, no matter what. And by the way, Helena asked a solid question at him. It was like, is this ethical? Right? And God, he couldn't answer that one. I grilled him about that as well. Says, you should answer Helena. She says, I were there if you want to talk to her. And he was like head down in that. I know I'm a little bit aggressive. I don't care. It's being male, right? You know, go fuck yourself. That's what I say. Where was it, Boise? You have to keep
That's
us up here.
toxic.
I am toxic. I don't care. Let me be toxic, okay? Put a warning label on it or something.
Can I?
Trigger warning.
It's not. I take your point. I think anyone should have been able to feel welcome to come into that room. It's not a Trojan horse. We're not going to argue. We are never going to argue. We will never be the people that you come if you want to medicalize. Because aside from anything else, there's loads of other places you could go. And I wouldn't recommend EPATH because they're bonkers, but we're never going to do that. We're never going to be saying transition. We don't believe.
I do worry that when we're going down the thread of, but this works for some, then we'll right back to where we were before, which is, okay, it works for some, maybe it worked for this group, maybe it'll work for that group. And that's exactly where we came from,
I think I might have missed some stuff. I didn't really see a lot of stuff with Ken, and I didn't actually meet Ken. Did anyone push back? Did he say that? Did it get to that point? Or do you think it didn't actually get to that point where because surely if he said, I think some people should transition, somebody in that room must have said. That's
what triggered Helena's question, which was...
Okay, good for her. Good for her.
Yeah, and the question for the people who didn't say it was, is it ethical to induce lifelong medicalization that's going to lead to osteoporosis, autoimmunity, and other health problems for this? What is that ethical? And he laughed at the question and said, I'm not going to answer it. Okay. And he wouldn't answer it in the other room. And I just think you're laughing it's funny to you, but it's not to me. I'm going to drill you. I'm sorry if they feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
for half an hour of the day, but people are like living in this discomfort for all the life, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like, do they need a free pass just because they joined our conference? Nah, fuck that. And I
No,
understand.
no, no,
Last
they
Because
don't.
question
I've
for
like,
Corinna. Last question for Corinna.
Yeah.
Where do you land on the medicalization? If is there an age limit? Where do you think that? I personally think that it's going to happen no matter what. The Pandora's box is open. You can put guardrails around it for
Yeah.
childhood and stuff like that. But where do you land on the medicalization? Never after an age.
Well, I'd like to answer, and I'd like to hear Ritchie because I think Ritchie disagrees with me. But I think that at some point, two things. One is that you shouldn't just do this to anybody who walks in and asks for it. There should be some sort of process of making sure that this person has competency and that they understand the risk. So no matter the age, that has to be there. But I think that after some point, we have to just agree that people who want to have cosmetic procedures performed on them are taking a risk, that we have to say they're adults. And I don't know if 21 is the right age for that. The laws that I've been supporting are 18, but I didn't pick the number. But whether it's 18 or 21, I would think that it'd be one of those two, probably 21.
I think personally, when it comes down to the medicalization, there's no point giving an opinion unless we have the solid research that shows the longevity, that shows if this is, because it could be that actually what some trans activists have said about this is overall it does improve people. Maybe they do earn a little bit more, maybe they even live a little longer or something like that. But we don't have that evidence in concrete form. We've got shit UCTS crabby survey that filters out people or that they don't want answers to, and it's not reliable. And this is the thing. We have the data. We've been doing surgeries, as activists say, for decades. So we must be able to. There must be something as simple as this. In the UK, for instance, there's like on average in the NHS, there's 140 vaginoplasties that occur through the Brighton Clinic every year. That's with the NHS, right? Doesn't seem like a lot, but when you add it up with the private in the background, it's quite a lot. And it's like, there must be a way to go and say, right, this is how many people had surgery in this year. Are they still alive? First question, are they still alive? Okay, if they're alive, what health problems do they have? Do they have any? Are they still transitioned? I feel like that data is within reach, and we're pretending it's this mystical, complex matter to get it. And I'm thinking it's not. They know who's alive and who's dead. They know what problems there are. They know who's had surgery. They just need to dig. And I think they know. They know the answers. And that's why they pretend it's like this mystical thing that they just don't know the answers to, that it's all a mystery. It's not a fucking mystery. Sorry, was that even related to what we're saying?
It is. Just to break in very briefly, checking my calendar, I'm actually free for another 30 minutes, so I apologize for that.
Okay, we can relax then.
Didn't mean to
Actually, I like the
that,
popcorn
Richie.
thing. I like
Yeah. So, the age for medicalization, there's no age limit on safeguards. It doesn't, as Corinna said, it doesn't matter how old you are. You should have the same safeguards. Obviously, children are going to be slightly different, but adults deserve help and care the same way as everyone else. And I don't care how old they are. And in terms of cosmetic procedures, there was a law firm a few years ago that had a sample of 1,000 people who had undergone cosmetic surgeries and found over 67% experienced significant regret. And this whole idea that, well, we'll do these cosmetic surgeries, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we shouldn't be doing these things too, as a society, and people saying, you know, you have this freedom of choice. You should be able to autonomous to make all your own fuck ups. Yeah, I kind of agree in a way, but I don't think we don't see limbless people, voluntary limbless people walking around for a reason. There are,
because they're limbless.
Yeah.
because I don't have legs. But
Well,
it's
of course
still a
they
good
won't be
point.
walking around. Yeah. Okay, I got you.
I think
Fuck's sake.
speaking for myself, because I came into this through parents and stuff. The parents were obviously, because like if you've got a 16-year-old kid and the kid wants to transition, you're thinking, I really don't want you to. The natural way to campaign is to say, well, yeah, I mean, once he's 18, because then that's like, I've got 2 years, I've got 2 years, I've got 2 years. And then the parents of the 17-year-olds are going like, well, maybe it's 21. And the parents of the 20-year-olds are going, maybe it's now there is this evidence that your brain doesn't develop until fully developed until you're 25, and that it's
Mm.
older for certain people, blah, blah, blah. But I think speaking for myself, just because I went in through that parent community, I probably put too much emphasis on age. And now I think a big plank of what we should be doing is doesn't matter whatever age you are. I would still like to see age prohibition, but it's only part of it. I would also like to see whatever age you are, you've got a right to fair knowledge. You've got a right to know what's true and what we don't know. And the last bit is probably more important at the minute because it's, as Ritchie says, it's all the things we don't know, which we could. And they're choosing not to. And I can't. I mean, Michael Biggs has shown you can do quite a lot with freedom of information requests, but ultimately I don't have access to people's private personal records, so I can't do that. We can't do that research. Somebody needs to do it, but it's all doable.
Could I share an EPATH anecdote that's related to age? So one of the I had been drawn into a conversation with one of the attendees of EPATH who was upset that I was there to ask questions, and she was very kindly. She was she's a therapist or a social worker in Ireland who's in her 60s, and she leads some of these trans groups in southwestern Ireland, and she really wanted to try to educate me. And we were being nice. You know, I like to have polite conversations with people, and as it happened in Killarney, while we were there's this big rally race that was happening that weekend as we were finishing up. And these rally racers are all like very largely young men with a small group of women that were sort of their followers that were coming around. And I would say maybe the oldest of them was 22, 23. They're all very young. And this woman was saying to me, "Oh, you'll want to be very careful walking around the streets of Killarney because these rally racers are in town, and the rally racers are okay, but they bring with them flocks of young men who are just very dangerous drivers. So you got to be very careful on the road this weekend." And then she said, and they're such dangerous drivers because their brains don't stop maturing until they're 28 years old. And I had just been having a conversation with her about why we don't want to be medicalizing minors because they don't have the maturity to understand their decisions. And I just fixed her with this look, and I said, "Oh, they're not mature enough until age 28. Is it?" She's like, "Well, you know, it's different. It's different between the young men who are driving dangerously and teenagers who are trying to become their true selves."
Why?
Yeah, why is that different?
Why am
It's
I
just
not my
different.
true self going at 120 kilometers an hour down a
I
very
know, right?
small
That's my
country
true
lane in Killarney? That sounds exactly like my true self.
Well,
That
this
is
is
my true self. I'm a boy racer.
the cognitive dissonance in the people who we're trying to persuade sometimes is so massive that even though we can speak slowly and simply and use very understandable models and examples, their cognitive dissonance will still prevent them from being able to acknowledge what you're saying because it would invalidate the other things that they believe.
I think it's fair enough to add to censor scale of that because I think if anyone had cognitive dissonance to the nth degree, it was me a few years ago, right? And it's like I'm going to struggle to like judge these people for not being able to see how obvious it is when, for all those years with me, it was staring us right in the face, and I refused to say it, and I would come out with all these crazy things from, you know, I'm not a gay, like the reason I'm not a gay man is because I'm actually a woman. So it doesn't make sense. And it was like, there's so much gymnastics that because it all meets these rules. And when you step back, because no one offers this to you, because when people are like antagonizing from the outside and saying that doesn't make sense, you just think they don't understand. So you don't even bother to try and understand their perspective. You're just saying you don't get it. But when you step outside, you're like, wow, this is actually fucking mental. This is crazy. What the actual fucking crazy, And it's like, it's because it's always one more thing getting introduced, right? And for me, the thing that really, really broke me were fairies and ABDL, and I was like, I can't.
Wait, what happened with the fairies? The fairies came to
Fairies
you?
and,
Godmother?
No. Fairies.
Oh, furries.
The
Okay.
fairies. I say fairies for some reason.
So you saw the furry community adopting the same sort of rhetoric that you were believing in. You're like, wait, this is the same pattern that I am locked in.
But I was having problems justifying why I didn't like their stuff, but my stuff was okay, and I couldn't do it. I was like, well, this is stupid. I was in this position where I was like, shit, I have to accept them. I have to accept them because it just falls this into question. Then I was thinking, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to request anyone who sexualizes animals or children. I'm not going to do it. Go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? Yeah.
We had a panel about the boys, which was what about the boys, which was nominally about kind of based on Alasdair's research into the boy question, but it became more about the men, or what about masculinity, about manhood, and the tensions with that. It was very interesting for me because we were in a room filled with women. So we had to do a lot of double tiptoeing and double stepping and kind of try to carve out a place for men to talk about men with men. And, there was just kind of some pressure there, which was kind of interesting. And then going from that panel onto the streets of Killarney, where you have all these women in mini skirts and with their it just everything's just hanging out, and then all these boys in these really loud cars. There was no more extreme kind of contrast between trying to be gender critical and then just be immersed in this culture that is very gendered, and they embrace it. They don't have any questions about it. And I know that the culture there even kind of mocked EPATH for trying to erase bathrooms and stuff, and there were some viral things going on there. So I just wanted to bring in, I just love the topic of gender. I was wanting to bring in, if you guys had any thoughts about that male issue, the boy issue, since we are here, we're all together.
I've got so much to say about the male thing, and I was good at the one letters on that panel, but I'll not get into the drama behind it.
Yeah,
I'll not get into the drama.
You spoke through Corinna. It wasn't long enough. But the thing is, hold on, let me just say this. It wasn't long enough, but everything wasn't long enough, and everyone came to me about everything and said, "Can you make more room for everything?" And then you're looking at it thinking no. Sorry, and I actually got a bit narky with a couple of people because they came up to me and said, "Da-da-da-da," and I'm like, "Yeah, I will say it's full."
That there should have been more. There should have been more in depth, and I think they were just trying to get a taste for everything, and which is good because it shows that people are hungry. But
and we didn't do everything. There's still whole topics that we missed. We didn't actually do autism. We didn't talk specifically about autism. Now, I can announce that we are going to Colorado in November. So we are. So US Path is having a conference in Denver, Colorado in November, and we will be there. Not much more to say about it in a minute, but we will be there. I'm not making any promises about my attendance.
Yes. Okay.
He says, saying we. Hopefully.
Okay.
You can promise.
So there'll be an opportunity if there's stuff that,
I said you should promise.
I should promise
that you'll be in Colorado, Denver in November.
I promise I'll be in Colorado.
You promise?
Yeah, I promise I'll be in Colorado.
Just this time around, I want the panel, the table that the panels are on, to have a Genspect banner on it, so I don't have to go in and in post. Yeah, put that on this big white blanket.
Yeah,
it was a good edit.
No, I do.
Yeah, it was a good edit. I think US path it remains to be seen because they could be quite different from EPATH. We have to remember Europe is changing, and the US,
Yeah, doubling down.
kind
So
of feels like it.
I would very much like to go back to the original topic, which was about the males.
Yeah,
Um,
let's expand on that.
There were quite a few points in there, and there were one of the critical points I really wanted to address, which was something that came up and a parent had stood up and argued against, which I was online, and it was a comment about an observation, a totally unhelpful observation, and I'm going to go into why we're leaning too much onto this theory regarding autogynephilia and men and masculinity is ultimately unhelpful. It doesn't help the people who are impacted. Not even understand it. It doesn't do anything. But this individual came out with an absolute shit theory that wasn't helpful. That the reason that young men transition is because of weak fathers. And I'm like, oh my God, if you met my dad and said that to him, he would bury you. You would be 6 feet under. My dad is the pinnacle of masculinity. That was definitely not a problem. He was a provider and he was strong. And a lot of other people in this have got either, it may not be a great relationship with your father, but they've got a strong masculine role model.
I don't remember all the details of that. Is it possible that there's a hangover from like the pre 20, whatever we call it, 2012, 2014 surge, and that there are things which were true, which are no longer true? Because one of the parts of the conversation which interested me is like, is there a male ROGD thing? Because maybe what you're saying is like, if there's a male ROGD cohort, that's not true. But for all I know, if you've been a clinician, you've been working through the 90s and noughties and so forth. I don't know. I don't know
There
about
is
the family
there is a male
psychodynamics.
ORGD cohort, and the reason that people want to say there's
I think
not is
so.
because it impacts the victim narrative that it's all impacting women and girls. That's
Mhm.
I
why people are
agree.
very much wanting. But I'm sorry, there are so many people, especially in the speedrunning community and nerd culture in a whole, has been drastically overtaken with trans ideology, and you're getting a lot of what people were. Yeah, to be honest, HRT and surgery has done what's crack done to poor communities in the 80s with crack cocaine. You know what I mean? It's totally decimated the nerd culture.
Well, allow me to provide a little bit more wiggle room and maybe some gentle pushback. If homophobia can be one cause leading toward a male to want to become a female, can't there also be some sort of the relationship with the male, the relationship with the masculinity, the relationship with becoming a man? I know with the AGPs that I've interviewed and that have desisted, it took them a long time to be comfortable with themselves as being male because they saw male as a negative archetype, whether it was their father or their community or something like that. So I think just opening up, maybe it's not helpful for some, but I think just opening up the exploration of masculinity as well as sexuality, just to give people more tools to understand and to fill out the picture of why they want to transition or why they did want to transition.
So here's the thing, Boise, to push back on your pushback. We're not just raised by our parents anymore, are we? We're not just raised by our primary caregiver. We're raised by TikTok. We're raised by the internet, by our teachers, by our friends, by what we see in media. So adopting like their view of masculinity to come from this like reductive view, if I only had my dad's view, I'd be a very different person. But that's not what happened. That was one ingredient in this huge recipe that has a lot of other components. This is one tiny thing. And to reduce it to saying that someone like the fathers in this are weak men, they are not weak men. They are the opposite of weak men, most of them. They have old-fashioned views, but does that make them weak? I don't think so. And I think there is a lot of personal bias in having that theory out, because if you've got a trans-identified daughter and you want to invest in the idea that this is all down to a weak father for the boys, then surely having a weak mother would be the reason for a trans-identified daughter, and that would instantly.
That doesn't ring true at all. That doesn't ring true at all. That's literally no, because we believe sex matters. So we don't believe that if No,
But this is
there's
the
no
message that I'm
sexes
hearing
don't work that
from.
way.
Let's not get too hung on the word weak, but I do want to talk about our father figures or father archetypes as not being able to connect very easily with sons who are not following their expected model of masculinity. So it's not that it makes them weak, but maybe they're not even engaging with their sons because I don't think it's unfamiliar for some of the stories that I've heard in the trans and detrans community among the males to say, yeah, my dad didn't get me. He didn't spend time with me. I didn't live up to his expectations. He couldn't operate at my level. He had no interest in my interests. So I don't think that it's necessarily weakness, but I would say that, and this is all men. It's not just people in the trans community, but or detrans community. But I think that there is actually sort of a lack of a nurturing father figure to help some of the outliers like us really see that we have potential as men.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two very different adjectives, strong and nurturing. They're not the same thing.
I think they are the same thing.
Well, they could be. It depends how you're nurturing. It depends how you're strong. I don't think that rings true at all. I mean, that to me, the whole point of what we believe is that there are fundamental differences between men and women. So I don't think that you can do that level of transitivity. I don't know about all of the family psychodynamics things, because basically the great thing that happened is we were in a room full of people who have very different views, and they were able to be expressed. And I kind of sat back slightly thinking, well, I don't know, because I came into this hearing the mother. So there's another person, which is the mother's perspective, because let's say you've got the mother, you've got the father, and you've got the boy. And I think we need to work that all out. But I don't think it's fair at all to say that goes into personal bias, unless it goes into personal bias for all of us, in which case, Jesus, well, now we're woke. Now you don't have the lived experience to say that and all the rest of it. And I don't particularly want to go down that road.
But there still needs to be
said that. Go on.
No.
Well, just that there is a father-shaped hole in the middle of this whole conversation. 96% of the parents who are in the GDSN are mothers. It's not like there's a rule saying the mother has to attend first. That is the natural way that things happen.
Is that not just the nature of mothers and fathers generally?
It could be. It could also be the nature of men wanting to avoid very, very female-oriented groups. That's another thing.
And also, let's go back to that point with the dad. I am not disputing that the father element plays into transition. I'm disputing how much of that plays in. How much credence are we giving into it, given the other factors? It could just be that the father aspect might set you up to be in the right conditions to transition. That might be one thing, but it doesn't take you all the way. It doesn't push you down that route. You need the internet.
Nobody said so many.
I know, but
nobody said. And there's genetics as well. There's a huge genetic thing. We've got neurodiversity. We've got sexuality. There's loads of stuff. Nobody said that. And
which is exactly why
recognized we're at the beginning of the conversation. This is tentative stuff.
Yeah.
These people have only just come into the room for the first time.
Which is why they should be very careful in what they say, because they say these things so flippantly, and it alienates half of their audience.
You and I said "fuck WPATH." Come on, like you.
It's me. Listen, I don't have a dick. I can get away with it, right? I can say these things. Other people who are coming at a more sort of professional view, from a helping view, need to be 100% what they're saying. They can't wait till someone like me comes in and corrects them and tells them that they're fake. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I feel very strongly about this naturally, but I feel like there is.
Different people think that there are different. We don't all agree with one another.
No.
That's the point. And we have to have dialogue to reach the point where we might question what we are saying.
And the problem is when that dialogue isn't allowed to happen, which was the case with what happened.
Well, it's allowed to happen right now.
But it didn't happen. It happened.
Well, right then at that moment.
I'm just a little bit pissed off about that.
I know.
And I feel like we do have fundamental issues when it comes to the support aspect. And I have
Support in what?
support
in
for
what
the
way?
detrans males and how they're getting handled in the background and other detransitioners. And it's about how do we go forward in a way that helps them. And I think Stella was right. Ultimately, it's going to fall on a charity for detransitioners by detransitioners.
Isn't
That
that
is going to get
already
it
just
right.
come into?
It is,
That's
yeah.
just come
Camille
into
and
existence.
Kat have set up Detrans Help, which is exactly that thread. Um,
Trans help.
Except that it
Detrans Help
doesn't.
is what it's called.
Except that it doesn't have any man, which is
It
surprising. And as somebody who's so
does.
pivotal in, well, not
It
on the website, it
does.
doesn't.
Yes, right. Okay. You've got to understand they're set up in the US. There are tax
Mm,
issues there. I can't just, like, I'm going to be doing stuff for them. I'm going to help them
okay.
out, but I can't be in that because the weird rules and stuff. So what I'll
Mhm.
probably want to do anyway is maybe set up a version in the UK of that, or for Europe or something, because there might be some boundary issues with the border. But I'm certainly involved, and I'm certainly more than happy to help them at any point. But also thinking of all the stuff that I'm doing generally, it's just another chunk of shit that
Mhm.
I want to do, and I just don't have the time, don't have
Yeah.
the money. I've got my full-time job and everything.
Well,
You know what
what?
I
On,
mean?
on that note, I have one also that I need to get going back to here.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ren.
Thanks for inviting me, Benjamin. It's good to
Thanks
see
for
you,
swinging by.
Ritchie, and you as
Nice to
well,
see you,
Alasdair.
Corinna.
See you soon.
Bye.
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 Boop. So, what positive thing on the positive side? What do the boys need? And we have discussed this before, but now that we've gone through the conference and thought more about this, seen the
So
landscape a little bit better.
as I've got the way I look at it is you've got a few different levels, and especially the ones who are about the mid-20s. That is a big struggle group. So they would have been transitioned for about 7 or 8 years, so late end of the teens. And a lot of these people lack the basic confidence just to call somebody and ask for help locally, and they might need somebody to advocate for them. So it might seem so tiny and small to anyone looking outside, but to them, having somebody say write an email on your behalf to get, like, say, help for a referral for a health thing or an autism referral, whatever it is, just those little things, those little pushes are monumental to the differences, because a lot of these people will sit in the rooms for weeks and stress about sending an email or making a phone call. And that fundamentally, it's these little tiny life things that are just too much for them to bear, that they need somebody to just come in and be like, if they can help them or saw them or like hold a hand a little bit. And I know people are reluctant to do that because they're adults, and it's like, actually, you're dealing with people with severe arrested development. I'm not talking like a little bit arrested development. I'm talking like their entire male socialization has been put on hold, scrambled up, and now we're trying to say now live as a male again. And it's like, hang on, they've got all these messed up ideas. They're feeling very vulnerable. They're feeling like they're gonna burst at any second. They've got physical pain. They've got issues with hormones. They've got all these other health problems. It's a lot just to make a little tiny phone call. So I think for a lot of us, and I think this extends to females too, but with the women, they tend to have a lot more women's groups that can help them out. Not always, but they do tend to have that little buy-in, and like with the whole rad fem movement, they're very embracing of female detransitioners. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I'm not going to get into. And I'm not talking about rad fem. I'm talking about jumping from one thing to another. This should all be about recovery and reintegrating, and then having a look into politics. But you can't just go from trauma to trauma. So for the males, they definitely need a little bit of handhold, and for the ones who are
Hmm.
a little bit past that, I see therapy as it can be helpful in if you've never ever really ever had any therapy whatsoever and you need some basic stuff. But the big one that keeps coming up is it EMDR or EDMR? One of the two. It's the it's like the go-to gold standard for OCD. And surprise, surprise,
Hmm.
OCD comes up again and again and again and again. And people are like running through like these self-help things, or maybe they're going through a therapist, And that is making the world of difference to the dysphoria, to their anxiety, to everything.
Do
I
you know
say
what
dysphoria.
how it helps, this acronym that
What was it
Yeah,
called again?
EMDR. You follow a light with your eyes, and you are asked to consider various topics as you follow the light, and the movement of your eyes into different unexpected places that you wouldn't normally use is claimed. And I think a lot of people believe this claim to activate parts of the brain differently, so that you're thinking about the same topic with different parts of your brain,
okay,
which then
so
treads
integrates you a little
down
bit.
new pathways through the neurological grass, and you can think about things differently. It's
Okay.
also used
Yes.
for people with PTSD, I think.
Which is a big thing that keeps coming up. And I'm not talking just from trauma from medicalization. I'm talking about lifelong PTSD. And it feels like transition has been this perfect escape for people to, and it was escape for me. Like I had a lot of, I did have severe PTSD from a lot of things that happened in school, for instance. And it's like, oh, you can't get PTSD from school. I'm like, you can when you think, when you literally believe your life's at threat and you're a kid. Yeah, of course you can. Why wouldn't you? And there's this mass oversimplification of like what it's like to be a boy in school when you're facing violence every single day. A slap on the head or a hit or maybe somebody's thrown something at you. It's expected in the culture. But for your sensitive lad, it just totally ruins them. And if a lass, a girl or whatever was getting that treatment, instantly people would understand why that shouldn't be happening because they understand the impacts. And you're dealing with people who have got a lot of sibling abuse. Again, going back to the family thing, this is another one that keeps coming up. Abuse from siblings. Like my older brother absolutely treated me like shit for years and years and years. Like he hated me, and I couldn't work out why, and he just did. And a lot of people have got this dynamic where they have a lot of shit from a sibling. And that comes into it. And again, this is why I get very antsy about going in and saying it's all the father, it's all the mother. I'm saying it's not. There are the school and your brother and sister are way more uh like you're with your brother and your sister more than you are with your parents. A lot of people don't understand that as well. You spend a lot of time with them, and when they're being abusive to you 24/7, it's hard to feel safe. It's hard to feel in control. It's hard not to feel anxious. And
Hmm.
that in itself can cause a lot of PTSD. And people think trauma, they think it has to be this horrific event where you're screaming in a corner getting beaten. No, it doesn't. It just has to be anything that made you feel uneasy,
Arrested.
unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think anyone is saying it's all the father or all the mother. Um, I don't think anyone's saying that at all. But I mean, I had serious trauma, and it was entirely related to parental relationships, entirely. And to say that isn't to deny anything else, and it's not to make a claim about a general population. To answer your question, Benjamin, what do the boys need? I think two things. One is it appears that finally what we've wanted for a very long time, which is detransitioner-led movements to advocacy by detransitioners, that needs to include men, either as a separate organization, a brother and sister, whatever, or as one organization. That's not up to me. I think Genspect should continue to provide all the services we're providing. It's worth stressing that there's stuff like we've got people who've been working in recruitment for many, many decades. So if you've detransitioned and let's say you've got a couple of blank years in your CV which you feel a bit kind of about, we'll continue doing, so you can come to, and we'll do that for free and give it back to you. And I think we should still do all of that, but I think it's time for the detransitioners to lead the detrans advocacy, and I'd like to see men involved in that. And then the second thing, and I would say this, is to realize how incredibly lucky you are to have the whole of your life ahead of you, even with a disability, if we want to call it a disability, because you can think of incontinence as a disability. It probably is a good way to think of it. If you have the whole of your life ahead of you, you're very, very lucky. I'd like some more optimism, and I'd like some joy in the world, and a bit of, bringing back a lot of what these young people have been robbed of, which is humor, friendship, being able to reach across the divide, giving people the benefit of the doubt, being able to flirt, being able to enjoy just all these things which seemed, I was just talking about all of this with Jesse Manister, like all of these things which just seem to have been taken by this horrible, heightened web kind of climate, which I think the reason that the conference felt like an oasis for so many people is because it took us all out of that, and we were all bodies. We were all embodied people, no matter how we feel about what our bodies are doing at the minute, sharing the same space, and that was very powerful. And I hope we don't lose that. I mean, maybe that just goes anyway because that's human nature. But I want us to hold on to that.
I agree. I think focusing on this as a recovery rather than a detransition is probably the healthiest way. Like for me, like I don't know what it was. I was still so afraid in transition. Like I didn't do the things I wanted to do. I promised myself I would start dancing when I transitioned. I would start swimming. I even wanted to do archery then, and I never did. I was still terrified. And now it's like, well, actually, what's the point in like processing what's happened is one thing, but you're right. You've got your life ahead of you and you need to like live it, which is why I've been living it as best as I possibly can lately.
Yeah.
I am a qualified archer, only the first level. But I will be going for some proper certification and be in the Olympics before you know it, I'm sure.
Nice. Yeah.
Robbing women of gold and stuff. So I'm kidding.
I was asked by somebody who was at the conference. They DM'd me, and he had an idea, like he wants to do some detransitioner support, like one-on-one things. I'm like, I don't know, but like maybe just a book club. Like just read some literature and just have a book club, just like build up like like thinking about getting out of your head, like what you're doing, Ritchie. And then also one more point, a detransitioner like gave me a tip and said that they cannot watch my videos anymore. It really, really helped them to go through the videos that I've done with transition and detransition, but they can't think about it anymore. It's just they are done with it. Thank you very much, and leaving. So like an offboarding process for detransitioners, absolutely essential. Which is
why you shouldn't really be doing advocacy for. I think the absolute time limit, the absolute end of this is 2 years. If you go over the 2-year mark, you've done something wrong. I think realistically, 6 months to 12 months is probably a good time, but overall, you should aim to come out of this. You can't be doing this forever. I don't want to turn into a
doing what? Like speaking or being a
like this,
activist
like
or detransition?
Being like a detrans activist. Could you imagine if I was doing this in 5 years? You'd be like, what the fuck are you doing, Ritchie? Go live your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like...
Well, certain people will have certain sort of ability to step back from the advocacy and actually just kind of be a counselor or something like that, a mentor, like where you're not on the spotlight. I don't think it is good for anybody to be an activist, period. But there is a role still for wisdom and elders and that kind of set.
Yeah,
down the road.
Absolutely. I'm with you. And in terms of the timescale, it's like when I first came out onto the scene, I was saying yes to everything because I didn't know how to say no. I ended up doing interviews with people I probably wouldn't have done now and all that sort of thing because you just can't say. And it's just like no one has a guidebook to what do you do when you get the spotlight drawn on you. No one's got that, especially in this. And it's just like I would like to be able to recycle some of that advice, and I have been able to help a few others who were in similar positions to me, and I'm glad I did because I could see what it was doing to them in the background. But yeah.
Beyond.
Deep in thought there, Alasdair, with your hat. You're not that tall in real life, by the way. I just thought I would say that because everyone was saying how tall he was. He's not. He's not. He's only 6'5".
Like the jolly green giant, except for he's pink.
Except for not green.
Yeah. So what next? What going forward? What are some cool things that are coming up?
I can tell you what we're doing.
Yeah.
You first.
Well, yeah, hold on a minute. When are you going to release this? Well, I can say we're going to Colorado. We're definitely going to Colorado, but we are very much intensively discussing where to go next. And the headline
And
of what
how.
we're going to do is we're going to replace WPATH.
Yay!
Essentially.
Do it. Fuck them.
We have a different view, which is that you don't have to medicalize the gender identity and it's better not to.
Yeah.
And we are going to formalize that view and we are going to replace them with that view. And we will not stop at anything short of that.
Yes.
We can never settle for the Trojan horses that is medicalization. It can never happen because we'll be right back to where we are. And I'm sorry, guys.
There will always be people who can help you medicalize. That's the thing. We don't need, if people want to medicalize,
they will find a way.
Yeah, it's just not going to be us.
We just don't want to make it.
But what we are going to do is provide a much more structured pathway for everyone actually in society of like, okay, so if you don't want to medicalize, and here's why you shouldn't want to medicalize, quite frankly, and this is what you can do, and this is what the people who know you can do, and this is what institutions can do, this is what politicians can do. To have all of that talent in the room, to have Ellen and Maya and Stephanie and all those brilliant people we met, we feel very galvanized, and it's time to do something with that.
Yeah, the adults are back in the room.
Yay! Mm-hmm. I'm not one of them, apparently.
It'll happen eventually.
It'll happen. I'll grow up. I'm 36 in 2 weeks, so I hope I grow up by then. Yeah. What have I got going on? The legal shit. Oh my God, there is so much cool shit happening in the background.
Really?
I wish I could be public about it. I really do.
It's moving forward then. You can say
it is. Okay. It is, and it's going to really piss off so many people. It's going to be brilliant. I can't wait. I'm writing this book, and I have been at it for over a year now, more or less. And when I can, in between meeting people or running groups and my job and everything else in life, and I'm trying to write this book. I see why Helen Joyce said she took time out to write hers. I was like, I wish I could. I can't. If I could take time out, I would have, because it's so intensive. And making sure that I don't just put something out for the sake of it, that it's meaningful, that it's written in the way that I want. And
what is it a book about? Is it an autobiography or your?
It's
some
kind of
femboy fan fiction, just taking.
Yeah, it's Tranny Elliott, basically. Billy Elliot, but Tranny.
So that could be actually heart touching. Yeah.
It will be, I'm sure.
So it's an autobiography.
Really yeah, it's a little bit. It's like narrating my own story, but also adding some observational stuff in it as well. So it's not like Helen Joyce's book or anything like that, or Hannah Barnes's book for that matter. It'll be very much more personalized, and speaking to that. Because to me, the only thing that really matters going forward in terms of, there's a lot that matters in activism, but the people I want to speak to, the people who are in it, the people who have the feelings that I had and just needed the permission to do so. Because I think there's a lot of shit working against them. Especially if you feel like transition was a really dumb idea, but I see why I did it. I'm not punishing myself, but it was a dumb idea. And it was like, how do I get out of it? You don't really have that option at the minute, do you? It's all very much like, you're going to retransition or you'll kill yourself. And it's just like, shit, I better stay trans then. But if I can put it into words and I can write down an experience of my experience that resonates with people, it might just stop a few from making this catastrophic error of judgment, because that's what it was. You okay out there, Alasdair? You're looking a bit... You all right?
Should we
Well,
land
it's
the
just
plane?
the sunlight.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
know the sunlight.
Just the sunlight.
Okay.
What'd you say, Benjamin?
Are we landing the plane now? Should we land the plane?
It feels like we're landing the
I
plane.
reckon. I just had a mad craving for eggs.
Ooh.
Just hit my body 30 seconds ago. Yeah, I really want to eat eggs.
How many eggs does a 6'5" man eat?
In what meal?
I don't know. How would he normally have your eggs?
Per meal.
If I had an omelette, 3.
Well, that's okay. That's acceptable. That's acceptable.
Occasionally 4.
Oh,
That's quite a large omelette.
What do you put in your omelet then? You have some dairy and
Chili. I usually put cheese in an omelette, chili, cheese, fried tomato, something like that.
yeah, wow. I never had chili.
An omelette with loads of raw chili in it is actually a real delight.
Like
I know
chili
it
pepper or
sounds
like chili,
strange.
like beanie chili?
Yeah, just finely, very, no, chili pepper, just very finely diced chili pepper.
Okay.
And you can almost just throw it in at the last minute and just have it crunchy. It's good. Sounds weird, but it's good. Spicy omelette.
I was thinking like beans in the middle of eggs. Like it was kind of weird, but you're doing chili peppers. Okay.
Oh, you could do that. That would actually be all right. It'd be like an egg
This
donut,
British.
wouldn't it? British, like a breakfast donut. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Hey.
Okay, yeah. Could
And
you
then wrap it in
live
bacon.
blog that, please?
I will do cooking with Ritchie, diabetes with Ritchie. That's what I call it.
Diabetes.
If we are landing the plane now, thank you everyone, blah blah blah, and all that sort of thing. And there are some bits I may need to redact, and I'll come back at you, Boise, because I was a bit spicy earlier on.
Okay,
And
we'll see. I marked them. I had my little markers. maybe. But thank you both very much. It was so wonderful to hang out with both of you and actually see you guys in person.
It was lovely.
It was wonderful.
I loved hanging out
It was
with
lovely.
you guys. It was.
People are like, so what did you do in Ireland? I'm like, I chain smoked and drank too much. Well, how did you see the country? I'm like, there were cows. I didn't really see anything other than other people. So.
No, you were here, and it was so intensive, you being here for 3 days, and then you went, and I was genuinely like, where's Countryman? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, when somebody's with you for 3 days, and it's a small house, and it was, it was lovely. It was really, really nice. It's really nice.
I really wish I could.
Well,
have
thanks
put
very much.
those pictures public, because we had a lot of. There was like this great picture with all these detransitioners, some of them who are very public and some who aren't, and it was such a nice picture. But I can't make it public. I wish I
Well,
could.
you just wait. One day you will. It's
One day I will.
archival document.
In like
Don't
20
delete it.
years, 20 years time.
Yeah.
Or something.
Put it in your book. Yeah.
In my book, yes.
In the history. The history. All right, guys. I'm
Right,
gonna.
thanks,
All right.
Boise.
Well, I'm off to cook.
All right.
Enjoy your eggs.
Okay.